I'm just looking to see where I've gone live. Okay, I'm a bit of a gym when it comes to technology, so please just bear with me. I'm hoping I've been able to go live in my event. I'm doing it from Zoom actually as it goes, and it's the first time I've done it in pages before, and I've done it in groups before, but it's kind of the first time I've ever tried to do it into an event like this. Oh yeah, no, I can see myself. There I am. Right, so I should probably point out that I'm not necessarily going to see comments and questions straight away. I do have a trusty assistant with me, my daughter, who is going to be helping to keep an eye on the comments for me. It'd be really, 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 really handy if you guys could just let me know if you can see me and if you can hear me all right, because, you know, obviously I'm not that technically brilliant with technology, and if there's any problems, then I need to know. Okay, can you hear me on there?
You've got someone saying hi.
Oh, hello, Emma Mowbray. Hello, how are you? Right, so yeah, I think we're all set up. So I'm just going to give it a minute or two more just to see if anyone else wants to come along. Like I say, I am sitting here on Zoom at the moment, so any messages and stuff will come through my daughter to me. Okay. While I've got you guys here, or I haven't got, I'm waiting for you all to trickle in. I was just going to speak to you quickly because I have had a bit of a week. I've had a few things going wrong in my world, and as anyone with anxiety knows, like, your anxiety can just go through the roof when things have gone wrong a little bit. So as I go along, I might stop and have a little breath. I might, you know, have to have a sip of water, or, you know, just little things to help me calm down. I tend to talk with my hands quite a lot as well. That keeps my mouth moving. I do have a bit of a stutter, and I do sometimes stumble over my words when I'm feeling nervous and when I'm anxious. And I've never done anything like this before. I've never done a conference like this before. So this is a massive thing for me to be doing. And after the week I've had, you know, I'm pretty up there with the anxiety levels right now. So just bear with me, okay? Just be patient, because I promise I'm trying my best. All right. Oh, hello. Who have we got? We got Susie Ann. Hi, Vicky. Hi, April. Good to see you here. Thank you for coming. It means a lot. I'm really glad of the support. Okay, so what I've actually got for you tonight is I've got a PowerPoint presentation to go through with you, because it'd be much nicer than looking at my ugly mug, basically. Now, the reason I do a PowerPoint is simply because it's better for you guys to look at, but it's also, it works as a prompt for me, because one of the things with anxiety, it always affects everybody differently, but with me, it affects my train of thought. It affects my memory, and I can just forget what I was talking about as I go along. So a PowerPoint helps me just as much as it does anybody else. Okay, so yeah, you'll have to put up with my badly drawn Canva graphics, but you know, I hope that it all works okay. Now we'll just see if I can share my screen. Hopefully I can. It'd be nice if you guys could tell me in a minute if you can see my PowerPoint. I'm hopefully clicking the right buttons. There we go. So what can you see on the screen at the moment? Anyone?
It's a bit laggy at the moment, so
it's a bit laggy apparently. So
oh, there you go.
Yeah, I think my PowerPoint is up. Right, so yeah, I mean, obviously the program that I've created is called the Fun Not Fear for Socially Anxious Guardians of Dogs. Fun Not Fear it's a concept I thought of a while back, actually, and when I first thought of Fun Not Fear, I thought of it in the sense of training dogs. But you know, we all know about reward-based training, and you know, how to train the dog with things they enjoy and not with punishment-based things like that. And when I first thought of Fun Not Fear and I first registered that trademark, that's where I thought I was going with it. But over the past year, I've discovered more and more and more that actually that applies to humans too. And so that's kind of what I'm going to talk to you a bit about tonight. So what I'm going to be talking to you tonight about mainly is the guardians of the dogs rather than the dogs themselves. Okay, so when I talk about the socially anxious client, I don't mean the dog, I mean the actual person. Okay, I do tend to say they and them and civvies and all sorts of different things in for client, and I sometimes call them the owners, I sometimes call them the guardians, I sometimes call them the carers. I call them all sorts of different things. I know some people prefer certain terminology, but you know, I'm quite colloquial, it just comes out basically. So right, so this is us Locks. We are Locks dogs. That's my son Aidan on the left there. I think he's on your left too. My daughter Ellie May, me, and my Moo. My Moo is my anxious dog who got me into behaviour work in the first place. Aidan, my son, he is 18 now. He has autism, Tourette's syndrome, and dyspraxia, which is a movement-based issue. And the little dog with him in the picture, that's Molly. She was one of our walking clients a while back. My daughter Ellie May, she's 21, and she does quite a lot of the videos and things that I'm involved with on things like the ISCP. She does a lot of her own video editing. She has her own video channel called Wild Flame Game, which is very good. It's full of special effects and all sorts of stuff that she's really, really clever at, which I wouldn't have a clue how to do. And obviously that's me. Now, beside us, you'll see a bunch of initials, and next to Aidan, that says generalised anxiety disorder. Now, with Aidan's various things that make him different, he is quite an anxious chap, and so he suffers from generalised anxiety disorder. Me, I have generalised anxiety disorder also. I also suffer from PTSD, and I have depression. Depression is one of those things that I think people ought to talk about a lot more, because there's so many people that have it and so many people live with it. And there used to be such a stigma, but the thing is, it's such a normal thing for people to have. When people are ill, you know, nobody thinks twice about saying, oh, they've hurt their leg, or, oh, you know, they've got an upset stomach. So when it comes to mental problems as well, I think the more we talk about them, the better. Now, PTSD, obviously that's something happened to me a long, long time ago, and it's left me with some pretty bad emotional scars, and my generalised anxiety disorder is to do with that. I was also an alcoholic for many years. I have been teetotal now for 10 years, but with alcoholism also comes anxiety. So that's me, that's my son. Now, Ellie May, my daughter, I do have permission to talk to you about this. She struggles with depression also, but she also has something called social anxiety disorder, or social phobia. It's one and the same thing, really. She is very, very nervous around people. Her social anxiety disorder means that she's constantly worried about being judged. And with generalised anxiety disorder, you tend to worry about just about everything. With social anxiety disorder, you worry about what other people think all the time. So, and it affects everybody completely differently. My program that I made is mainly about social anxiety disorder, but it fits for most anxiety, really. Things like agoraphobia, all sorts of things, it all kind of fits in together. But with social anxiety disorder, it brings with it its own set of issues. And like I say, it's on a spectrum. People either, you know, they're a little bit worried about meeting strangers, right up to it being like a full-blown problem that really interferes with their lives. I'll try and explain to you just quickly with a story that Ellie told me the other day. Right, a few years ago, a friend of hers was diagnosed with a life-threatening illness. Now, Ellie at the time was up north with some of her friends. We live right down in Suffolk. Okay, and she'd gone all the way across the country on the trains to see her friend. She got up there, she'd been there for the week. She found out about her friend, wanted to come home again, naturally. So she booked her train tickets on the internet. She'd come all the way from Chester through London and several changes on the train on the way. Managed to navigate her way around London, from London to Cambridge, navigated her way to Cambridge to Newmarket, home again. She got all her stuff ready to go to the hospital. She got the train to Cambridge again, right? Got all the way up to the hospital, got in to see her friends. So this is a young girl who's travelled all the way across the country on her own, gone through capital city on her own, spent hours and hours and hours travelling up and down the breadth of the country, gotten into the hospital, gone to see her friend, right? And then realised she hadn't brought any food with her. So for 2 days, Ellie sat in the ward with her friend with no food and only a couple of sips of water. And the reason for that is because she would have to ask the nurse to let her out of the ward. Okay, so that's a girl that can travel all the way across the country by herself, but can't get off the ward to go and get some food because it involves speaking to the nurse. So that is the very the top end of social anxiety. It can affect so many things, and you don't even think about it until it's actually something that goes on in your world or your child's world or, you know, a family member's world. And it affects so many things. I mean, she can get, as I say, she can get the train on the other end of the country and back again, no problem. But she won't jump in a taxi and go 3 miles up the road because it involves speaking to the taxi driver. You see? So she can talk to me for hours and hours on end, and we have the most fantastic and daft and funny conversations. But with strangers, she just can't speak. You know, and it is one of these things that can be so debilitating, right? And, you know, the more I thought about it, the more it just became to me like, you know, people have got problems like this. People also have dogs, right? Now, I must admit, I am a pet dog trainer. I'm not a service dog trainer or an assistance dog trainer. I can put people in touch with those if that's what they need. And with people who have anxiety of different degrees, they may well need service dogs or anxiety assistance dogs and so on. But for now, I mean, I deal with pet dogs. So, and I should also point out as well that I am not in any way qualified to help anyone with their anxiety. What I've done instead is I've gone and found people who are qualified. So the program that I'm running at the moment, we have a lady called Linda Wood who runs confidence coaching and training with Linda Wood. And she's there. She's going to help us with our lives. She's going to do our breathing exercises. She's dealing with the human end of like the lead of the anxiety stuff, and I'm going to deal with the dog stuff. And we've pulled in different people who are experts in different things. So I've got a groomer on board. I'm speaking to a nutritionist at the moment. I'm speaking to various different people that are all experts, that are all coming in to help my clients with their things. Now, the reason I'm here tonight is not actually to sell you guys into the program, because it's like this is for clients rather than for actual dog trainers. But it's because I want you to sort of consider when you are dealing with people with anxiety, just how it actually affects them, because I think there's so many people with anxiety that you're bound to come across them. And I think that perhaps having a little bit of like background information will help you guys with your training and help you guys to give these people the results they need and the help that they need as well. But anyway, so a little bit about me, or just a little bit more about me. I own Locke's Dogs Behaviourist and Trainer, obviously. I'm the co-coordinator of ICANN, the Secretary of Interdogs. I work with the ISCP and I run the Dog Welfare Alliance. I'm part of the Pet Professional Guild, the Academy of Dog Training Behaviour, and I'm also really proud to be part of Kids Around Dogs with Debbie Luckin. I qualified with the ISCP to the Advanced Behaviour Diploma, Level 6. I qualified with Absolute Dogs, doing the Pro Dog Trainer and the Geek programs. I'm currently working on nutrition with the ISCP. Yeah, and that's pretty much us. We're a very anxious little family, but we really want to do something to help people, you know, with these things. Okay, so slide number 2, you lucky people. I'm just going to have a sip of my coffee. So in our home, we've all got our various anxieties anyway. So the reason I came up with the thoughts behind Fun Not Fear is a couple of years ago, I went to Absolute Dogs in Devon. And I went down there to do the Pro Dog Trainer Week and the Super Trainer Live and all the rest of it. And, you know, we all go down there. We had a great time. But when I was talking to the other mums down there, I mean, I left Ellie and Aidan at home because, I mean, they're adults, basically. They should be able to be by themselves for a few days. And anyway, I went down there and I was talking to the other parents with teenagers and older children. And they were all moaning because their kids had got drunk, or their kids had ate all the food already, or their kids had like locked themselves out the house, or their kids had all been doing all sorts of stupid things. They borrowed the car and that kind of thing. Whereas my worries were nothing like any of those. My worries were more, what if the dog gets out and Ellie can't ring anyone for help? She won't be able to go and call him down the park. Or what if they run out of dog food or find that the dog food's gone off and they have to go to the pet shop? How are they going to get there? Because they won't be able to call a taxi. Yeah. Or perhaps if there was an emergency of some description, would Ellie wait until Aidan was home and make him ring an emergency line? And all these little things, I kept thinking of all these little situations that would involve Ellie having to speak to someone, or having to wait until Aidan was home from his college or wherever he was at, in order to be able to deal with, just the things that the rest of us would take for granted. And, it just led me to thinking that there's got to be other people in that situation. There must be so many people out there with social anxiety, or any kind of anxiety for that matter. And they're all trying to live with their dogs, looking after their dogs. Not all of them are living at home with their mum and, have mum at home to look after the dog normally. These people, they live on their own sometimes. They live with other members of their family. They have their own pets, their own dogs to look after, and their own struggles doing so because of their social anxiety. So I started researching a little bit. So here's just some facts that I pulled out of Anxiety UK. So obviously they're not the most recent statistics, but they're just honestly the first ones I came across. So in 2013, there were 8.2 million cases of anxiety disorder. Most commonly presented anxiety disorders to Anxiety UK were generalised anxiety disorder, mixed depression and anxiety, health anxiety, social phobia, which is the same as social anxiety disorder, depression, panic disorder, where you have panic attacks, etc., etc., OCD, PTSD, agoraphobia, and I'm not even going to try and say that one, but the fear of being sick. Okay, so 8.2 million people, and I think there's something like 66 million people in the country, so that's about what, 1 in 8? 1 in 8-ish people with an anxiety disorder, right? Now, 61.5% of those people never actually received treatment, and a quarter of all UK households at that point, I think it's more now, own a dog. So that is a hell of a lot of people with an anxiety disorder and a dog, possibly with no medical treatment or anything like that going on just in the UK, let alone worldwide. That's the beauty of the internet, is we can do things worldwide. But anyway, so it's a massive problem, and there is a lot of people with their pets that are not getting the help that they could do with getting, and they're struggling, Then along comes COVID-19, and people begin to struggle even more with anxiety. People that didn't necessarily have anxiety beforehand are starting to feel the effects as well, because obviously the threat of COVID-19 is hanging over us, and more people being at home brought more dogs as well. So now you have more anxious people with more dogs. So I'm just quickly looking through my notes so I can see where I've gotten to. Have we got some comments, have we?
Well, there's a couple that about how they relate to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Ruby, Betsy and Milo can relate to this, can teach a class or workshop but can't talk on the phone unless dog related. And that is actually very, very common. Like, unless you actually have an idea of what you want to talk about in advance of getting on the phone, it can be really difficult to have a chat. Kayla, thank you. We're really trying, so thanks. That's really good. Jay, I made a list of phone calls I need to make, and it caused such high anxiety for hours. I was on the verge of crying and couldn't function. I'm feeling better after group therapy session, but I still don't want to make those calls. And yeah, the calls are hard. It's one of the hardest things. I mean, one of the things we actually teach in our program is to write scripts for various things. So scripts for the vets, scripts for the insurance companies, and not necessarily the same thing that they're not necessarily going to stick to the exact script, because obviously they don't have one. But if you have all the information that you need written down in front of you and presented sort of in a way that you'll be able to sort of read it out to them without your mind going blank and without forgetting what you're going to say, then it just makes it a hell of a lot easier to have conversations with people on the phone. I mean, I'm sitting here at the moment, you can't see because you can see my PowerPoint, but I'm sitting here with about 97 bits of paper, basically acting as my script, just so I can, I can read along. But yeah, so, and it's a massive problem, and anything that involves speaking to people can be really hard. I mean, it's draining for most people actually on a day-to-day basis, but for somebody with social anxiety, it's not just scary, but it's exhausting as well, and people often need a few hours break afterwards. So anyway, so back to the presentation. So yeah, you've got more people with more dogs, more anxiety. Now, people with social anxiety, they find it harder to talk to other people, and this can affect their everyday lives immensely. Now, as I said before, some people it doesn't so much. Some people, they're just a little bit shy. Some people, they might have the odd panic attack and things like that from time to time. But other people, it can be really, really debilitating. It's a spectrum, and there are so many things involved in it, which would be impossible to cover in this one presentation. But, so I've just written down a few examples, really. So for the dog-human partnership, this can mean it's almost impossible to attend training classes. So if you think about it, a training class, some people will be able to go in, they'll be fine because they're given directions, they're given something to do, they're able to get on with doing it, they don't necessarily have to talk to anybody else, and then they can go home. But the person who has social anxiety might not be able to attend the training classes because they might not be able to get the taxi there, because that involves speaking to the taxi driver. They might not be able to ring the person to arrange to go to the training classes because that involves speaking to them on the phone. They might not be able to cope with being in a room with 6 other people if their dog's playing up. Right? They might not be able to cope with the trainer coming over and speaking to them in the middle of the class. So there's quite a lot of things that are thrown into a training class that can make it really difficult for somebody with social anxiety that most of us probably wouldn't even think of and we just take for granted. So if you have training classes and there is a possibility that somebody in that training class has social anxiety, it might be, easier to either give them one-to-ones or to just bear it in mind when you don't go up and talk to them or single them out or get them to bring their puppy up or, speak to them and find out what they're comfortable with. Because it's a really, really hard thing. And of course, if their dogs aren't attending training classes or even one-to-one training or anything like that for that matter, then what you've got is an anxious person and a dog that's possibly quite untrained. So it's also scary to phone people like the insurance company or register a microchip. Like we were saying a minute ago, phone calls can be really, really hard. They involve speaking to somebody. If somebody asks you a question and don't have the answers and they catch you off guard, that can just send some people into a blind panic. So when you're training people that have got social anxiety with their dogs, make sure that they have things written down so that before, make sure they know their microchip number and they've got it written in a space near their phone in case the dog ever gets out. Because if they're ringing someone in a hurry and they need to check the microchip, then they've got those bits of paper and everything there ready rather than trying to think of things off the top of their head. The same with the insurance company. Have all their details and stuff beside the phone. Make sure that they've been able to ring them. Make sure that if they haven't been able to set up insurance, maybe they can't talk to them themselves, make sure they have an advocate that can, maybe even do it for them, offer it as a service to go along with your training. It can be almost impossible to attend the vets or take the dog to the groomer. Well, I mean, in Fun Not Fear, we do talk through that as part of the program. But we also have our own groomer, who Stephanie Zickman. A lot of you will know her. She's amazing. But she's been making videos and things for me, like instructional videos. And it's possible maybe you could do that kind of thing for your clients, so they don't necessarily have to take the dog to the groomer. If they know how to brush the dog, they know how to bath the dog, if they know how to do the nails, then they won't necessarily have to take the dog to the groomer too much. You see, things like these, but like if they are socially anxious, they might not be able to ask somebody how to do these things themselves anyway. So by you setting them up, by you advocating and setting them up with some videos or a groomer of their own to speak to, or even just making the appointments and doing scripts with them for the phone or anything like that, any of those things that you can do to make it easier for them to get the dog to the groomer, brilliant, because otherwise you're going to end up with an anxious person with a possibly untrained, uninsured dog who might be covered in mats and playing up because they're uncomfortable. Yeah, so then you might find that your client might be less able to drive, because not because they're incapable of using their feet and using the steering wheel or anything like that, but they might not have been able to cope with a driving instructor. Okay, because again, that's a lot of close contact. As talking to somebody, learning to drive is scary at the best of times. So your client might not have a car. You might need to go and meet them in places instead. They also will probably find it really hard to use public transport. So that's another thing to bear in mind. You might need to go to them and you might need to help them find ways of getting to places if you can't get to them. Okay. If you have anxiety and it's scary to go to call for help in an emergency, I know if something was going on at home and I don't know, if there was a burglary or something like that, my daughter wouldn't necessarily be able to call the police. Okay, if somebody got into the house, she wouldn't be able to run next door and bang on their door. She wouldn't know what to do. And, you know, sometimes people with the social anxiety problems, they would rather go through whatever it is that the emergency is than speak to somebody to get help, because for some reason that, you know, they have that block when it comes to needing to speak to somebody, even when it becomes like a real problem like that. And of course, you know, that can be exactly the same for the dog. If the dog gets run over, they might not be able to call the vet, they might not be able to. So what you want to do is make sure you have things like scripts and stuff set up and an advocate set up so that if they can't ring their vet, if they can't ring the police, if they can't do these things, then perhaps they can ring their advocate, which might be their mother, it might be their dad, it might be their friend, it might, you know, as long as they've got somebody that they can speak to, even if they just text that person, because sometimes texting is easier, just so that they've got somebody that can help them in an emergency, so that they have a way of reaching out. And that is something that, I mean, obviously it's not our responsibility to make sure our clients are all safe 24/7, but it is, if we're dealing with a socially anxious person and we're taking that on, then it kind of is useful for us to be able to know that they have a way of getting hold of someone who can call their vet, who can call the police, who can do things for them. Okay, so I've got some comments. Okay,
quite a few to scroll.
So April says, yes, it's so exhausting. I need a day to recover from a phone call or vet visit. Yes, that is absolutely, yeah, totally get that. So Emma says, I find having general anxiety coupled with a reactive dog can be difficult. Sometimes simple walks can be incredibly daunting, especially if I'm on my own. I imagine the worst case scenario. And yeah, that absolutely happens. And you build it up in your head, and your body doesn't actually always know if you're if what you're thinking is real or not. So your brain will be reacting as if these threats and these things that you're, the worst case scenario that you're imagining, your body will actually be, you know, it'll be reacting as if those things are happening, and that's hard. Ruby, Betsy and Milo too. I had someone that couldn't show their face on the phone, so all training was done on the back-facing camera on Facebook call. Yep. Again, it's really hard to speak to people face-to-face, even sometimes on the phone, like, you know. Katie says, my advice on the group's been really helpful. I'm really pleased. Thank you ever so much. I'm really glad you're finding it useful. I'm finding it useful too, actually, just to be, because I'm learning with you guys, you know. Hi, Dawn. Sorry to struggle to get in. It just kept saying video starting soon. Oh, hopefully you're in now. Ruby said, who's doing angry face? Well, hopefully nobody's too angry. Hi, Erica. Hope you're okay. Hi, yeah, having an advocate is a great idea. Emma, yes, absolutely. It is one of the most useful things you can have. I mean, it can be your mum, it can be your friend, it can be anybody, but just have somebody set up so that you can just drop a text to, and, you know, they will ring you and make sure that you're okay, or, you know, if possibly maybe they can give you a lift to the vets, or, you know, that kind of thing. It's important to have somebody who can help if you can't do it yourself. Okay. So where did I get to on here? Right, scary to go for call help in an emergency. It's much, much harder to do things that people take for granted, like going to the pet shop or making a food delivery order. You see, again, that involves getting there. So you might have the public transport problem. If you're in the pet shops, the person might come up to you. You know, they always come and help and say, "Oh, is there anything? Can you find everything?" Or, you know, you might not be able to find something. You know, and then you might be wandering around the shop and not be able to ask. You know, you might want to be measuring your dog up for a new coat or something like that. And you know, if you haven't necessarily got your dog's measurements, it can be really, really daunting, you know. And people, so making a food delivery order, well, I mean, to be honest, most of mine I do online actually, so that's not so bad. But there have been the odd occasion when they ring me up and they'll say, "Oh, the driver's on the way." Now, for me, that's fine, but if they did that for my daughter, and like, she probably wouldn't even answer the phone because she wouldn't know the number, and she doesn't answer the phone at the best of times, to be honest. So yeah, so dog walking's scary. What if another dog comes along or another person wants to say hi to my dog? I mean, for starters, if your dog's not necessarily well trained to start with, then you're already anxious when you're starting to walk that dog anyhow. But if your dog's already likely to run off and they haven't got a recall, or if they're likely to bark at another dog, then of course that's mortifying for everybody. But you know, if you've got social anxiety, that's actually a real fear, because then you're worried about what that other dog owner is thinking of you. If a person comes over and wants to stroke your dog, I mean, you know, especially if you've got a dog that doesn't like being stroked, how are you going to tell that person if you don't want them to do it? You know, it's hard enough for most of us just to, you know, just say, okay, no, he doesn't really like people. But if you have some person with social anxiety, that's really difficult, you know. And dog walking can become an absolute chore. It can be terrifying. Another thing is, I mean, you can get yourself a more anxious dog, because if you think about it, dogs know when we're going to have fits. Dogs know when we're ill. Dogs know when we're about to faint. You know, dogs get trained up to do all sorts of things. So they must be able to tell when we're feeling a bit anxious. I mean, I'm presuming they can smell our hormones or something like that. I'm not qualified enough to say, but you know, dogs can tell when we're anxious. If dogs can tell when we're going to have a panic attack, and like, you know, then they can tell that we're anxious. And the thing is, some dogs, they cope with it absolutely fine. Other dogs, it can make them anxious too. So then you've got an anxious person and an anxious dog, and a possibly dog that's untrained, and you've got all this other stuff going on, and it just goes round and round and round, and it's really hard. And also, when you think of it, these people, they don't necessarily have the friendship circles around them that everybody else might. You know, I mean, I'm using these terms very colloquially, so please don't be offended if I'm saying the wrong terms for people. Okay, but these dogs are they're the most important part of some of their humans' lives. You know, it's definitely the most important part of mine, apart from my kids anyway. So I've got comments again. So sorry if I've covered, this is Erica. Sorry if you've covered this, but does Fun Not Fear have a train the trainer type of course? I would love to learn more about working with people's social anxiety. I imagine it would be difficult to reach out for help. Now that's kind of next on my list actually. I'm thinking of that and I'm working on it as I'm going along. So I'll be in touch about that, Erica. Debbie, this is so useful and I'm so glad you're addressing this issue, helping out. Oh, thanks, Debbie. Katie, I'm nearly 30, but my mum took over talking to the vets today because I really couldn't focus on saying the right thing. It helps to have someone else to deal with the detail stuff. Yeah, that's exactly what I say. I mean, using your mum as an advocate is absolutely perfect. Dawn, yes, I am now X, but guess what? Skylar, my dog, wants attention. So I'm doing impulse dog treat control and listening to you at the same time. Oh, brilliant, Dawn. How's that going? Let me know. Right, so anxious people as well, they're often hit with a whole pile of self-fulfilling prophecies and vicious circles. So, I mean, I've just put some very rough examples here, but I mean, people have panic attacks, for instance. They worry about panicking in a social situation. So they're already feeling very anxious before they even get to that social situation. By the time they get there, their anxiety levels are high. They have a panic attack, or, you know, whatever, they're just really anxious and really not feeling well. And they prove themselves right that being in that situation, they had a panic attack. So next time they come to that situation, they're more worried about having a panic attack. And then you get to a point where they panic in case they're going to panic. Okay, and then social anxiety that tends to happen a lot. You know, I mean, I know Ellie panics almost every day about things, and the more she thinks she's going to panic, the more likely it is she'll panic, and then she'll panic again next time as well. So then you have the owners who are struggling to ask for help because they're embarrassed by their own anxiety. You know, panicking in front of people it feels like embarrassing. It's awful, you know. And they're embarrassed by their dog's behaviour as well, because obviously they're terrified that whoever they're asking for help is going to judge them. They're going to judge their dog. And so they don't ask for the help. Their own anxiety or their dog's behaviour it spirals and gets worse, and that makes it even harder to ask for help because they're even more embarrassed by their anxiety or their dog's behaviour. If you can hear a strange panting noise, by the way, that's not me, that's Moo sitting beside me, because he's wondering who I'm talking to, I think. All right. And then you have like another example here. You worry about your dog's behaviour in social situations. Now, for a person with social anxiety, if your dog's going to do something they shouldn't do in a social situation, that is so embarrassing. You know, you think the whole world's looking at you. And of course, if your dog has not necessarily been trained so well, is picking up on your anxiety, then he's more likely to have an unwanted behaviour in a social situation. Okay, so again, the person with the anxiety has proved themselves right, and they worry about their dog's behaviour in social situations, and it goes round and round and round and round. And what happens is it can get really, really hard for these people to find help with these things. And they struggle on in silence because they're afraid of being found out. They're afraid that people are going to think they're a bad dog owner. They're afraid that people are going to judge them because they're panicking. They're afraid of all sorts of different things. And really their problems just go round in circles and it just spirals. And then caring for the dog just becomes something else that makes you anxious. Because the dog's not necessarily getting everything they need to be well adjusted. They might not be getting walked as often. They might not be getting the dog food that they could have got. They might, you know, they're going to struggle too. So I've just got a couple more comments. Debbie, oh my God, yes, that's so me. I often have a panic attack because I worry about having a panic attack. Yeah, me too, Debbie. That is, I mean, I had one before we came on here, actually, because I knew it was going to happen. So I was just glad it was out of the way, to be honest with you. But I'm right up there now. I'm pretty close. Dawn, I have some anxieties and strangers, especially men, I struggle with if they approach me, even more so when in a wheelchair since 2015. My dog knows when I'm going to have a panic attack and started calming me. Not bad for a dog that has anxiety issues. He's mainly got on assistance dog scheme to help with my physical difficulties, but started comforting me by nudging me when I'm about to panic. They're amazing dogs, aren't they? P.S. Sky's doing great on impulse control. I was able to put a kibble on his paw and it was still there as I looked away. Not bad for a collie who's super duper quick off the mark and gets his treat. Oh, well done, Sky. April, scared of getting a puppy. People will want to pet them because cute puppy and I'm worried about being assertive. I don't want training interrupted and I want to be able to protect my puppy from forced socialising. People get manic about puppies, but I need to go into public to make sure puppy sees the world and has positive experiences. Yeah, and if you're panicking, there might not be positive experiences as well. And then you'll be worrying about that too. I know exactly what you mean, April. It is scary. Dawn, oh yeah, he's not passed final exam yet. He's still in training to be an assistance dog. I'm sure he'll do absolutely brilliantly. Jay, I've noticed a huge difference in my mental state being out with my dog versus being out without him. On my own, I'm barely holding it together and my thoughts are racing and I'm worried about people. With my dog, I'm aware of people, not reacting, not freaking out. My thoughts are calm, feeling him move on the leash, watching how he's doing, etc. is greatly grounding for me. Yeah, absolutely, Jay. Giving you something to concentrate on other than what other people are doing is, you know, that's hugely, hugely helpful. And we do concentrate on in the program. We have a couple of methods that are also sort of grounding and about. It's all. I suppose it's a kind of mindfulness, really, isn't it? But you're using your dog as the sensory part of it. Emma, that's so true. I always feel responsible for my dog and her behaviours, even though we've been working so hard on her issues. I always feel like somehow it's my fault, even though I know it isn't. Yeah, and all dogs have behaviours. You know, it's they wouldn't be moving and they wouldn't be breathing, they wouldn't be doing anything if they weren't. You know, and everybody always feels slightly embarrassed by it. But if when you have social anxiety, it feels like the whole world's watching you. I do know what you mean, and then that makes everything, it magnifies. I know exactly what you mean. So we developed Fun Not Fear. Now, Fun Not Fear is obviously the name of my program. And I'll share with you guys roughly what we do. And some of it you're probably implementing already, in all fairness. So the first thing we do is we need to consider how the client is actually going to access us, because a lot of socially anxious people are not really happy to talk in person. So they're probably not likely to ring you. Okay, so what you would want is plenty of different ways that they can message you. I mean, they might want to ring you. That's cool if they do, you know. And if somebody has social anxiety and they want to send you messages, so usually with my training and one-to-one, at the moment I put them through to a discovery call. I ring them up, we have a chat, we see what they need. But with a socially anxious person, I wouldn't do that. What I would do instead is I would have an email conversation with them, or I would have a Facebook Messenger conversation with them, or a WhatsApp, or, you know, anything that they feel comfortable using. So when they come in and join my group, I make sure that, you know, they're a suitable person, really. I don't really want too many people that are not suitable for my group joining. So I do tend to make sure that I ask the questions on the way in. I ask them if they have anxiety, if they have a dog, if they agree to the rules of the group, because I want to make that a really safe space, so that when the clients are talking to me through that group, I want them to feel very, very safe there. Okay, so we always need to consider how the clients are accessing us. It has to be a safe space where they feel comfortable. Okay, right, so when they are in your groups, or if they're in your classes, or, you know, if you're doing one-to-one, you don't want any pressure on them to be publicly involved at all. So you don't put pictures on your Facebook pages for the public, for the world to see. You know, you don't have them sharing videos if they don't want to. They don't even have to reply in your groups. They don't have to do anything at all that they're not comfortable with. Groups and things that say on Facebook, we keep those private, and it's up to people if they want to share in there. We don't make them. When it comes to doing the actual coursework and stuff like that, I don't force them to send me videos backwards and forwards of whatever it is they're doing, because they will feel judged. Whenever they feel judged, they'll panic. Okay, so everything they do within your groups, within your course, they need to feel comfortable with it. So you need to make sure all the time that they're not under pressure to do things like send you videos, like talk on the phone, do all those sort of things, like no pressure whatsoever. Now, one of your roles for a socially anxious dog guardian is to be an advocate and a gateway to other dog professionals who also understand the unique set of issues with anxiety. So for us, for example, I'm not a groomer. So I contacted Stephanie Zickman, who is our specialist groomer. Now, Stephanie, she has her own anxiety issues, so she understands how anxiety works. Now, because I've introduced her in a safe space to my clients in the group, they have now recently started to ask questions. I mean, one of them was asking a very good question about nail clipping the other day and how to go about that. Because they feel that they're in a safe space to be able to do that, you know, and Stephanie understands how they are feeling, it just makes it a lot easier for them to be able to approach these people. So you can be an advocate and a gateway to other dog professionals. You know, I mean, I'm not suggesting be an advocate for them in other areas of their life, because that's really not our job. But, you know, for dog professionals, you know, we can be that person that can get them to the place they need to be. We can be that person to give them the scripts for the vet. We can be that person to help them navigate measuring the dog up for coats and things. We can be that person. We can be that advocate. And we can even help them decide on an advocate for themselves to help them with their own things and the rest of their life, you know. So you can help the client learn to care for, train the dog, manage the behaviour in ways that they can easily follow, access and understand, in a safe environment with no judgment, with the option of added one-to-one support if needed. Be very aware of overwhelm at all stages. So again, I mean, when I'm saying teaching the client to train their dog and to manage behaviour, I'm not talking like advanced obedience training. I'm not talking hoopers. I'm not talking, you know, he'll work to music. I'm talking things like sit, down, stay, the stuff that they would learn in puppy classes. But if they haven't been able to get to them, or if they find it over, what you need to do is you need to break each lesson down so that they can follow each bit as well. So in a puppy class or in an online class, sometimes people can go quite fast, and sometimes with people with social anxiety, if they don't get it the first few times, they'll panic, and then they will be afraid to speak up and say they're not getting it. So you have to break everything down so small into such small little steps so they can easily follow everything. And you need it to be things like recorded videos so they can do it over and over again, so they can watch, they can see what you're doing, they can, and if you've successfully created a safe space so that they can ask you about stuff, then they're more likely to come and contact you if they're not getting the idea behind the training that they need. Okay, again, you can add in one-to-one support if you need to. Overwhelm, though, that will knock any training on the head. If they think that they can't do it, then they'll panic. If they feel that they're not being able to understand what you want, then they won't necessarily ask you. So you have to make sure at all times that you're not overwhelming that person, and you break everything down to a point where they can do it. Okay. So practical help with their anxiety and their self-care through the anxiety specialist, and especially redesigned resources and guides. Well, that would be the resources and guides would be our scripts and things like that, as we spoke about. I also, I'm quite a fan of mindfulness and breathing exercises and things like that. So I post those in the group from time to time. And also because I'm not qualified in anxiety, and I'm quite open about that. I know enough about it, but I'm not qualified. So it is important to have a specialist, somebody who knows what they're doing, to make sure that you're not going to just go and make things worse, basically. So that's where we have Linda stepping in. She's amazing, and I really recommend going and looking and finding her, actually, because she's really good. So what we do is with the easy way for them to contact us, we become a gateway for them to be introduced to other dog professionals, and they can learn the things they need to learn to train and care for their dog, and in a way that they can manage it so they're not overwhelmed. And while doing this, what happens is it creates like a series of easy wins. Now, when we're training dogs, we want to build confidence in our dogs. We give them easy wins. We teach them easy things to do, because then we can praise them and they can feel clever and they know that they're getting things right. But it works exactly the same with people. The more little wins they get, the more of a sense of achievement they get, the more they feel more comfortable and more confident in their training, the more they feel like they know what they're doing, because they do. Once they stop panicking, it's no different to training any other person, and once these clients have started to feel like, actually, I can teach my dog to sit, actually, I can do this, actually, I can do that, what happens is the dog starts, the client and the dog relationship, they enjoy training more. The dog starts to feel more confident in the human, and the human feels more confident in the dog. And that in turn then helps them with things like their walks and stuff, because the human already knows that their dog suddenly is better trained than he was before, for instance. So his recall might be better because they've been practicing that more, because the client actually understood how to train the recall, and it just, instead of being like a downward spiral where, they're panicking because they're in case they panic, etc., 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 they start to feel better about things. So what will happen is they'll go out, their dog will look good, their dog will be doing things that they wanted them to do. They'll be getting better at training them, and their confidence will rocket. So they'll train them new things and more things, and they'll enjoy doing that. And then the dog's training gets better and better, and then they become more confident. And then, and it just gets better and better and better. And also then what we tend to find happens is they then start talking to newer clients, because they have then found that confidence in themselves to help the newer clients with the easier things like the sit, or giving them advice about how to do, I don't know, downs or food, or, and doing that, it also means that then they start to feel like they can talk to people, which then gives them friends, which is so important to people with social anxiety, because finding people who understand social anxiety is really, really hard, because obviously they're not going to go and socialise with each other. So it's for them to be able to find each other and to be able to have something in common as well, in this case the dogs, it, you know, there's the potential to be life-changing for these people, but it has to be managed in a way that is not overwhelming. So that is what we are developing with Fun Not Fear. So this is one of my little sayings: from little wins come great big things. And I honestly believe it's true. If we can make these little adjustments in our training to make them easier for these people with social anxiety, these people are going to have so much better lives and better relationships with their dogs. And in turn, that's going to make their own confidence levels better. That's going to help with their own anxiety journeys. That's going to help with their dog's behaviour issues. You know, it's going to help with all sorts of things. That's going to make lives so much better for so many people. So yeah, that's pretty much the end of my presentation, but I'm just going to pop through and have a look at some of these comments again. Okay. So Erica, it's so incredibly important to meet people where they're at. Think about what they need in any given moment. Yes, exactly that. Sometimes it's we're so, as trainers, we're so we tend to think that people are at our level of knowledge sometimes, and we expect people to have learned to do the touch in half an hour. We expect people to have learned the sit by the end of a session. And sometimes, you know, if people are not able to do that and they're not able to speak up at that, then we're failing as trainers, really, because our job is to train that person to train their dog. Okay. So, Dawn, I wish I knew you in 2012 before I felt overwhelmed and totally picked the wrong dog school for me and my dog. It was a place where new clients each week, well, it could be new clients each week. It became well over double numbers in a group and different faces to week before. I later found out a group where it was a 6-week block course with better trainer and no more than 6 clients in each class. It made a huge difference with my relationship with my dog. Yeah, it does sound like, I mean, some training classes, I mean, some of them are great, some of them are not so great. You know, it's finding, if you find a good one, then yeah, brilliant. You know, it'd be useful for you know, if you kept hold of that trainer's details in case you needed to speak to them about anything in the future, because you can trust that one. April, I love how you work to make yourself available and approachable for anxious owners. Well, I'm an anxious person myself, so I know how hard it can be. And having watched my daughter and my son struggle with their anxiety-related issues, and theirs pop up in different areas of life to dog training, obviously. Aiden's pop up when he's at school, and my daughter pops up in her life as well. So watching them navigate things is kind of, it's helping me to understand how to navigate my stuff, which I'm hoping is helping to help other people navigate their stuff. I love, April, actually, how you show up so much in the group. You're so chatty and friendly in there, and it's really, really great to see you. You contribute so much. I love having you in there. It's so hard or brave to find a trainer or class, let alone someone who understands your situation. Yeah, and I think that's true with anything in life, not necessarily just social anxiety, but anything really. Confidence feeds more confidence. Love this. Erica, yes, it does. And that's a really nice little quote. I might have to pop that on a graphic, actually. Dawn, brilliant saying. Oh, thank you. I'm quite good at coming up with these little things sometimes. From little wins, yeah, from little wins come great big things. Yep. And it applies to humans as well as dogs, don't forget. Okay. Kayla, I've learned a lot I hadn't considered here. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. Kayla, that's cool. That's what I'm here for. I mean, there's a lot to do with social anxiety that people wouldn't necessarily have ever thought of, you know, and it has so many different facets to it that, you know, and it varies from person to person. So it's just always something to bear in mind, because the better trainers we can be for our humans, the better they can be for their dogs. Hilary, this is such great info. It's given me much better insight into social anxiety. This is such important info to be getting out there. Oh, brilliant. I'm glad you're finding it useful. April, yeah, love the presentation. Thank you. No, thank you. Emma, thank you. It was such an important topic and a brilliant presentation. Love your group. Only found it recently, but it makes me feel less alone. So thank you. Emma, we haven't actually been going that long, so you found us pretty much at the start. So hopefully we'll have plenty of more resources in there soon. I have been speaking to Linda lately, and we're planning on getting some lives going over the next couple of months as well. So hopefully you'll like those. Okay. April, thank you. I love the group and there's such lovely people there. Yep, there is. And we're going to work hard to keep it that way as well. Right, so my voice is actually starting to go now. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen so I can just say hello to you. Look at my eyes, I look so tired. Oh my God. Right. So it's been absolutely brilliant having you all here. If you have any questions or anything like that, you can get hold of me, Freya Locke. I usually answer pretty much straight away because I seem to always be on Facebook. But yeah, I hope you'll have a brilliant evening, what's left of it, because it's 5 to 11. I'm going to go and drink some coffee and probably find a box set to watch, because that is another thing that's really important with social anxiety is self-care. Okay, so you should always follow anything up that's difficult like this with something nice for yourself. Okay, all right. Anyway, you guys take care. Bye-bye.